Hello, Teresa. I welcome you in the video series Meet the Expert in Citizen Social Science. And I know about you that you are from Vienna, that you are a social worker and activist, and of course a researcher at the University of Vienna in the Department of Education. And so you are involved now for a few years in a citizen social science project. My first question is, what is your identity? How would you define your role? So what is it when you are a citizen social scientist?
I think when I think about citizen social science, I'm primarily a researcher that is interested in tackling social issues through research, and especially to research that involves citizens, like people that are normally not involved in the research process. And I think that is some part of my main identity here.
Why do you think it is important to engage with other people, that citizens are engaged in this project?
I think that there are so many different perspectives that come into a project when you involve a variety of people and do not only focus on the expertise of researchers or social researchers, but involve people that are affected by a problem or an issue or a challenge in their everyday lives. And I think they contribute a lot to a research project. So I think it's important to collaborate here also on a research level, and not only, for example, on an activist level, or in the case of social work, to discuss topics on how to support people, but to engage them in doing research and find new information, analyze information, data, to gain new insights, actually.
So you want to engage other people, but what is your story? How did you get engaged, involved into this citizen science?
That was some of a process, I would say. I started some years ago to be involved in a participatory research project with younger people, like with young people between the age of 9 to 13 years old. So I have some experience in participatory research with young people. And yeah, then CoAct came along, and we were part of designing also this project. And it was very interesting already in the beginning to think about how to set up a project that is focused on citizen social science, and who to involve, which project partners to involve, also which topics might be interesting for such a project. So CoAct was my first encounter with citizen social science, and it has been my main task for the last 2.5 years now. So that's how I engage with citizen social science.
Is there a difference between participatory approaches and citizen science, or what are the differences and what are the similarities?
I think, or as far as I understand it, is participatory action research is a pillar, a pillar stone for citizen social science. So I think citizen social science can learn a lot from the approaches of participatory action research, but it brings more. Like, it brings more of citizen engagement. It brings a bigger discussion on open data. It brings a more interdisciplinary approach, which can be very useful, I think. And that is something participatory action research was not focusing so much on. So I think there citizen social science has some benefits.
Is there a moment of enlightenment that you said, oh, that's something that is a new perspective on doing science? Or do you have something like this, such a moment? Or
could you rephrase your question?
Yeah. So have you got a new idea from the citizen science? So I think that you have a lot of expertise and experience and participatory approaches, and then you came along the citizen science project, and was there a moment where you said, oh, that's interesting, that's something new that I learned?
I think I learned a lot, actually. I think I learned a lot from all our partners that were involved in the project, especially when it comes also to the co-creation and co-development of tools, for example. I think that is something I had not experienced so much before, and that's something I take with me. I also learned a lot about discussions about open data and how open data can be a tool to democratize research too. So I think that are 2 points that are very, very interesting for me and still are. And yeah, that's something I take with me.
And do you have a special take on citizen science? So you already told that you did research with young people, but is there something that you say, yeah, that is my expertise, or a special method that I like to apply?
I would say my focus is on developing qualitative methods, or especially qualitative research methods, to be usable by young people. So to break down a very complex, complicated research process to be usable by young people, by young citizens, for their own agendas. And I think that's very important to develop tools that not only researchers can use for their interests, but to develop tools that can be used by everybody. And especially young people have been left out of this process for a long time. And they need special, like they need not maybe special tools, but they need different tools so they can work with them. And I think that's also my expertise, or that's what I like to put forward in this research process, that we need to have more of them. And I'm very interested in this line of work, actually.
And can you describe one of these methods, what you do really practical, probably the methods that you like most?
I think one tool actually. So we developed some methods that are hard to describe now because they are focusing on discursive processes. But I think one tool we developed was a game, where actually two games young people can use to get familiarized with, for example, categorization or interviewing, and it uses gamification as a basic principle to try out basic social science processes, and then get also the confidence to do an actual social science research project, for example. And I think that's something that makes research a little bit more accessible to young people. So you first get familiar, not on a very serious basis, but on a playful basis, and on like something that you don't have to be afraid of, because normally research is it's for somebody else. Like, it's not for young people. Young people do not do research. So you use these tools to say, okay, you can do it too. You can do research. You can use it for your agendas, and support them also in lowering these barriers that are normally built up also in a discourse in our society, that research is only for those attending university, for example. And I think that's another point, like that research is normally something that is associated with being in higher education, or at least being a high school student. And I think one main principle from our work is that we say no, research should be for everybody. And also if you are an apprentice somewhere, or if you dropped out of education, because you quit school and you're 15, you can still be part of the research process. Mm-hmm. So I think developing tools also for people who are not familiar with higher educational discourses is very important. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And from your experiences, what are the benefits for the citizens, for young people in your case?
I think, and that's also what young people told me as a feedback to our co-research processes, is that they are the takeaway that people are listening to them. So that other people, for example, policymakers, are listening to their outcomes, to their results of their own research. And that is an empowering moment, I would say. So if young citizens participate in such a research process, they can work together with researchers to communicate their issues and then also their research results to people that make decisions. And that's something that they are not allowed very often, actually. So we think that in our society, people can participate in political process, for example. But for young people, this is often not the case. So only some young people are invited to be part of policy decision-making processes. And I think what is in there for young citizens, if they participate in such a process, that they can have they can be part of a platform that allows them to communicate their results, their ideas, their demands also, like what they need to, in our case, have a better educational setting that suits them better, actually, or that discriminates them less, or that fights against marginalization. So, yeah.
And one of the most important terms, from my opinion, is participation, co-creation, collaboration when it comes to social science. So, in your opinion, what is special important about these aspects?
I think when it comes to participation, it is important to note that participation is not a one-way process. So it's not about including young people into an already existing structure and telling them, yeah, you can be part of this structure, but it has to be a two-way process. And that's why I like the word collaboration so much more, because there you have like a group that is collaborating, they're working on things together. And you are defining also like you're defining together like what is the topic and what are we doing and what are we discussing. But it's a mutual process where everybody has to have a say. And I think that's why I like the word collaboration more, because you join your forces and everybody brings a different perspective into this process. Like young people have a lot of experiences in their daily life, where they bring a lot of knowledge already to the table. And I think that's very important to hear these experiences and to make them the starting point for a research process, for example. But also to take these experiences seriously for later discussions on what do we do about issues that came up. And also as a researcher, if I collaborate with somebody, I bring my knowledge as a researcher, as a social researcher in this case, but I can only like bring it to the group, and the group has to decide, okay, what we do with it. So I think, that's a very important words for very important processes, actually. Yeah.
Yes, and everyone would agree that it's good that someone can participate and collaborate, but to realize it's not so easy. Yeah. So what do you think? What are the challenges, or what is the danger? Yeah. In collaborative, participatory settings, or what?
I think what one has to be careful about is that even though we wish that everybody can participate equally, it's often not the case. Like some voices are louder than others, and also not only within the group, for example, of co-researchers, but also in the relationship between different participants, like researchers, co-researchers, policymakers. Like you have to be aware of the power structures that define these groups and that also silence some voices while making others louder. And I think that is the most important challenge one has to address when starting such a collaborative process, actually. So I think it's also necessary to not only focus on, okay, we did some perfect research, for example, like everything was in order, but also to look behind the processes and reflect on who was involved in this process, who had a say in decision-making processes, etc. So I think that is something that is challenging when collaborating, especially with young people, where you also have an age difference, and also have, as in our case, like a difference in educational backgrounds, for example, of very different stakeholders. And therefore also different experiences and life world experiences that you bring also into the research process actually.
Okay, and the last question, what is the vision for you for the further development of citizen social science?
I think what I would like to see is that citizen social science gets even more accessible to a variety of people, like that it is usable and accessible and approachable for people to use it for their topics, for their issues. And I would like to see more of that actually, so that it becomes an approach that is a tool for citizens and not only a tool for researchers. And I also like that it is in itself an interdisciplinary approach. So a variety of expertise are part of a citizen social science process actually. So it would be interesting to even expand here like the disciplines and interested in this approach and join forces to develop this approach, this research approach. I think that would be the future.
Teresa, thank you very much for sharing your experiences and your knowledge. I wish you the best for your further academic career. And yes,
thank you
very much.
Thanks for the interview.